My name is Sarah Pinch. I am the Managing Director of Pinch Point Communications. I sit as an independent advisor to the Senedd, the Welsh Assembly Commission, and I'm Vice Chair of Manx Care, which is a brand new organisation that will come into effect on the 1st of April, running the health and social care on the Isle of Man. I'm also the chair of the Taylor Bennett Foundation, and we are a charity that supports young BAME people into careers in public relations and communications. And I've recently been appointed as a trustee of Bristol Students' Union, which is where I live, in Bristol, not the Students' Union, obviously. So I want to talk about forgetting fear, and I want to talk about ambition. Because sometimes I think ambition is a dirty word if you're a woman. And I want to challenge you today to reclaim your ambitious ambitions, because I am really ambitious. I am ambitious for change. I am ambitious for equality, and I am ambitious for diversity. I don't care who achieves those ambitions, whether that's me, whether that's someone that I've supported, whether that's someone I'm working with, or whether that's someone I don't know, and I can just celebrate that something has changed. I was recently introduced to the amazing Professor Julia Rouse, who is a professor at Manchester Metropolitan University, and she has done an enormous amount of research into women entrepreneurs. Her research at the moment has also looked at the impact of the pandemic on female entrepreneurs and broadly on female-led business. And it is not good. Women are really facing the brunt of this pandemic. And that's the evidence, that's not my opinion. And her evidence goes on to say that women with caring responsibilities are even more badly affected, and women with what she calls the pressure, the double pressure of caring responsibilities for the young and elderly parents or relatives are really being terribly, terribly squeezed. And therefore, I would really challenge you all today to be ambitious for those women that you know are really struggling. And if you're one of them, please put your hand up and ask for help. I've done that recently, and it's really important. And I'm doing another session later on about the importance of saying no, and I'll talk a little bit more about that there. But for me, following my ambitions has meant that I have had to take some risks, and I've had to face my fears. I am a communications professional by background. I started as a journalist at the BBC for 10 years, and for the last 20 years, I've worked in corporate communications. I've run my own agency for the last 8 of those. But I knew once I left the BBC that I wanted to broaden my understanding of business. And whilst I went into a charity as the head of public relations, I wanted to understand what it was that that charity did. And I think that's the journalist in me, being very nosy, but also really wanting to be able to not be pigeonholed. That ambition to learn about that charity, which was a charity that I'd supported for many years financially and with my time, really enabled me then to contribute much more effectively to discussions, whether that was within my team or my department, or indeed with trustees and the board. And it's something that I've really followed through, is getting to understand organisations that I either work for or work with. And it's obviously one of the most enormous frustrations to me at the moment that I can't get onto the Isle of Man and see the health and social care there in reality for myself. But I think it's really important that we face risks, but that we do so in a calculated way, as the title says, because it's not really sensible. So I started running 4 years ago, and I joined a group called This Mum Runs, and I started something called the Run 30 programme. Frankly, I had no idea what I was getting myself into. And it wasn't until week 3 that another one of the women said to me as we were leaving the session, would you like to do your homework run with me? I didn't even know I was supposed to be doing homework runs. So reading the small print is not my strong point. But we started doing our homework runs together. And she said to me, do you realise in week 8, we're going to run for 23 minutes non-stop. Well, how we laughed about that. I thought that was utterly impossible. I'd never been athletic at all in my whole life. And I was finding it quite challenging at that point to run for 6 minutes without passing out. I've now completed 2 half marathons, 2 sprint triathlons, and I've done the Prudential Ride London, which some of you may know is a really pretty brutal 100-mile bike ride. I'm never, ever doing that again. But my point is, it was a incremental experience for me. It would have been a ridiculous risk to have decided that on day one of deciding to learn to run, that I was going to run a marathon, or indeed a half marathon, or indeed 5K. And I think sometimes as women, men as well, but I think particularly as women, we look at something and we think, well, there's no way I can do that. Rather than looking at something and saying, yep, I want to do that. How do I break that down? How do I manage that? And I know in my job, that is what I do every single day. And actually, I've just started to apply that to myself. And now I'm still a work in progress, but I definitely have taken calculated risks with my own fitness and health, as I've just said, but also with my career. And one of the things that I decided to do quite early on was to always do something else outside of work. And when I left the BBC, I had less time away and less big projects to work on. And so when I joined Christian Aid, the charity where I was the head of public relations, I also trained to be a Samaritan. When I left London and moved to Bristol to work for First Group, the transport company, I also became a governor at a local school. I've subsequently held a number of different board positions, but I have incrementally increased the risk, I suppose, that I'm taking in terms of the profile of those organisations, the responsibility that those organisations carry. And ultimately, that has led me to be able to be appointed as vice chair of a large organisation managing the health and social care of 84,000 people who live on the Isle of Man. So I would really encourage you to think about your ambition, about where it is you want to be, what you want to achieve, what your ideas are, what your hopes are, and to really try to follow those and to do so in a way that sees you take incremental steps towards that goal. I also want to talk about why I think it's important that women talk about ambition. I have a number of godchildren, goddaughters and godsons. I have a number of nieces and nephews, and I have my own 6-year-old daughter. And I want all of those young people in my life to know, A, that to be ambitious is not a dirty word, that B, ambition is not just for men, and that C, ambition does not mean stepping on people, upsetting people, or not being compassionate. I think through this pandemic, one of the most brilliant, ambitious, and self-aware and compassionate people that we have seen is the Prime Minister of New Zealand. And I think in Jacinda Ardern, we see an incredibly ambitious woman, ambitious for her politics, for her policies, and for her people, for her population. And she has taken calculated risks in this pandemic that has seen New Zealand have some of the lowest death rates in the world. And I think by, to use her term, going early, going hard, they have reaped the results of that. And similarly, I'm sure all of you were absolutely entranced when she was telling the children why the Easter Bunny might be late in delivering their chocolate eggs last year. Hope to goodness she doesn't have to say that again this year. But I think we must model and role model to the young people in our lives how ambitious women can still be compassionate women, can still be approachable women. And hopefully we can influence other people in leadership positions to see that it's not about shouting the loudest or indeed stepping over other people in order to achieve those ambitions that we have.